Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another exciting edition of Unit 6 Polynomials. Mr. C here, ready to take you through it. So, we are looking at 6b, day 2, multiplying a polynomial by a monomial. So, on the last video, we looked at how to add and subtract polynomials. Today, we are going to start the discussion on how to multiply them. So, we already know what a polynomial is. We already know what a monomial is. Let's get to it. So, our first couple of examples look semi-similar to things we've tackled in the past. Like, for example, in A, when I see that 2x and then that group, that binomial in parentheses, what I want to do is I want to distribute. I want to use that distributive property. So, once I distribute that, all I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to multiply the numbers, and I'm going to have to multiply the variables. Now remember, when I am multiplying variables that have the same base, what do I do with those exponents? I add those exponents. So I've got 2 times 6, that's going to give me 12. X times x squared is going to give me x to the third. And then I've also got 2x times negative 3x. So I got 2 times negative 3, that's going to give me minus 6. And x times x, which is going to give me x squared. Now, take a step back. You always want to look, is there anything that I can combine? Any like terms going on here? Not the case here. Nothing else I can simplify. That's all we're doing today. Okay? Make sure that we are good to go on that distributive property and combining like terms, multiplying the numbers, and multiplying variables. So, let's take it a step further. Let's multiply a monomial by this trinomial here. So if I look at that, I got negative 3 times 7. That's going to give me negative 21. A squared times a squared. That's going to give me a to the fourth. I've got negative 3a squared times negative a. That's going to give me positive 3a to the third power. And then last but not least, I've got negative 3a squared times 4. That's going to give me negative 12a squared. No like terms, nothing I can simplify. That's all we can do. All right, it's very important that we understand today's lesson, especially as we move forward to a little more challenging stuff in the coming weeks. Let's look at another problem. Very similar here, just a little bit more difficult. Here I've got 2 terms, and I've got a lot of different multiplication that I have to do. So let's just look at this first term. Let's distribute this 2p to both those terms. So let's distribute the 2p to the binomial. Our first distribution right here looks like we've got negative 8p to the third power. And 2p times 5p, that's going to give me 10p squared. Now in the second grouping over here, let's distribute the negative 5. Negative 5 times 2p squared, that's going to give me minus 10p squared. And negative 5 times 20, well, that's going to give me minus 100. Now, take a step back and see, is there anything that I can combine? And you will notice you've got 10p squared minus 10p squared. So when I combine those, the p squareds go away. And so what this expression simplifies down to is negative 8p cubed minus 100. So that complicated polynomial expression we started with, once we simplified everything, we got down to a cubic binomial. Just 2 terms going on here. So you'll notice in the last 3 examples, we dealt with expressions. We weren't solving for our variable, we were just simplifying the expressions. Well, what would happen if we wanted to solve for the variable? Notice, we've got an equal sign now. So we want to find the value of our variable b that would make this equation true. Well, even though we have these new concepts of multiplying polynomials, the strategy is still the same thing. I want to get the variables alone, and I want to get the numbers alone on their each respective sides. But in order to do that, I have to multiply first. So I got b times 12 and b times b. So that is going to simplify to give me 12b plus b squared. I'm going to drop down this minus 7, nothing I can do with it yet, and then I've got that equal sign. On the right-hand side, I've got 2b, and then I want to distribute this b to that binomial, negative 4 plus b. So b times negative 4, that's minus 4b. b times b, that's plus b squared. Now, let's take a step back. Let's see if there's anything I can simplify. On the blue side, I have no like terms. So let's just drop that down because there's nothing I can do with it quite yet. On the right-hand side, and I've got this equal sign, on the right-hand side, I've got 2b minus 4b. Well, I can combine those like terms. 2b minus 4b, that's going to give me negative 2b plus b squared. So, my next thing is I want to get the b's on one side, and I want to get the numbers on the other. Well, if you'll notice, I only have one constant value, this negative 7. I only have one constant value. It's already by itself on the left-hand side. So I want to get the b's from the left-hand side, the 12b and the b squared. I want to move those over to the right-hand side. So let's start first with just the b squared. Let's subtract b squared from both sides. When I subtract b squared from both sides, you'll notice they cancel out in both locations. B squareds are just gone. So let me scroll down here, give myself a little bit more room. And let's see what we got. Over on the blue side, what's left is 12b minus 7. And on the red side is negative 2b. Now, on the blue side, I need to get that negative 7 alone. So I am going to subtract 12b from both sides, canceling out the 12b over on the left, dropping down this negative 7. And then on the right-hand side, I've got negative 2b minus 12b. Well, that's going to give me negative 14b. So we're really close to getting that b alone. Remember, our end goal is to figure out the value of b. So what is that negative 14 doing to that b? It is multiplying it. So how do I undo multiplication? I divide. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 14. That gets the b alone on the right-hand side. Now all I have to do is simplify the left-hand side. So I see I've got negative 7 divided by negative 14. So a negative divided by a negative is going to give me a positive. And 7 over 14, when I reduce that fraction, I get 1/2. So b turns out to be 1/2. As you'll notice, a little bit of work. Yes, we're going to add a little bit more work as you progress in math, but the strategies, our end goal, is still the same thing that we've been doing for a majority of the school year. You've got this. All you have to do is practice it and employ the different strategies that I'm giving you, okay? Make sure you're asking questions. Let's do one more together. Let's look at what we got going on here. We want to simplify and solve. We got an equation, so we're trying to figure out what is d going to be. Well, right off the bat, I can see that I need to multiply. So d times the binomial d plus 3, that's going to give me d squared plus 3d. And then, in the second group, I have to distribute negative d to the binomial d minus 4. So that's going to give me minus d squared plus 4d. And then I've got equals on the right-hand side, nothing I can do quite yet. So let's just drop 9d minus 16. Now, take a step back, see if you can combine like terms. You'll notice I've got d squared minus d squared, and I have 3d plus 4d. So d squared minus d squared, that's going to go away. D squareds are gone. Now I've got 3d plus 4d, that's going to give me 7d. And then on the right-hand side, I've still got 9d minus, sorry about that, 9d minus 16. So remember, once we get to this point, we want to get the variables on one side, the numbers on the other. So I am going to subtract 9d from both sides. 9d from both sides. So that makes this go away, cancel out. And on the left-hand side, 7d minus 9d gives me negative 2d equals negative 16. To close it all out, how do I get the d totally alone? I have to divide both sides by negative 2. When I divide both sides by negative 2, I get d equals, what's negative 16 divided by negative 2? Well, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So, the solution to this equation is 8. Remember, if you want to double check your answer, just take this 8, plug it in every time you see a d, and make sure that your equation is true. Stuff I've been saying all year. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking your notes. Hopefully you have some questions you can bring to me and you're willing to work next time I see you in class. You got these 2 You Try Now problems. Test them out. We'll go over them in class. This solve the equation seems really difficult. Just make sure you're being very careful with all those different c values, especially when you start combining like terms. Thank you for joining me. I look forward to seeing you all in class. As always, be good, do some good, and I hope you have a fantastic night.